Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. We are really delighted to be talking today about how to improve workplace practices and decrease stress. Today, our presenter is Sarah Pipetti. Sarah is an EAP counselor with Lytle EAP Partners, and Sarah began her career in community mental health in 2005. She graduated from Indiana University of Pennsylvania with her master's degree in community counseling in 2010. And prior to that, Sarah had completed her bachelor's degree in kinesiology from Penn State. She became a licensed professional counselor in Pennsylvania in 2011 and began working at Penn State Altoona as a drug and alcohol counselor. More recently, she's had the opportunity to provide behavioral health and wellness coaching to active duty and reserve Marines, and she's been with Lytle EAP Partners since October 2016. So we're delighted to have Sarah with us to talk about this topic, and we will be going, say, about 20 minutes or so, and then leaving some time for questions. So with the questions, you'll see in our chat box here, I have a little welcome message, and you could put any comments in there, but there's also a question box here on the control panel, and you can enter any questions in that question box, and we can answer those when we get to the end. Okay, thank you, and Sarah, I will turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Beth, very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Like Beth said, we should have some time at the end here for any questions, but today I do hope to be able to provide you all with some relevant information on how to improve well-being practices and decrease stress in the workplace. So well-being in the workplace is extremely important for both employees and employers. Poor well-being is often overlooked or hidden in the workplace. Employees can hide their symptoms very well in the workplace, or their symptoms can look a little bit different when they're at work. Poor well-being can increase the likelihood of physical ailments, such as hypertension or diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, as well as many other physical illnesses. And it can also affect workers' careers and productivity. So this definitely imperils the worker and employee as well as it does the employer. So the employees may not be performing to the best of their ability if they are not finding well-rounded well-being in the workplace. It is important to remember that well-being doesn't just mean being physically healthy. It should include all aspects of health, as each aspect is just as important as the other. So encouraging employees to address mental health symptoms and issues is just as important as encouraging your employees to visit their doctor regularly to get their cholesterol checked or their blood pressure checked. And one of the reasons that well-being programs often fail in the workplace is because workplaces only focus on one of those aspects of well-being rather than taking a holistic approach. So on the next slide, a common problem in the workplace is stress. Obviously, we have all experienced stress in one form or another. Everybody experiences stress a little bit differently, and what causes stress to one person doesn't necessarily stress another person out. But it can come from all different kinds of things. So, it could result from an overwhelming workload, or maybe an employee is feeling a lack of support, or maybe they feel like they have too many demands, or feeling that there's not enough time to complete their tasks. Obviously, stress can lead to burnout and strained relationships between coworkers. This could result in lots of on-the-job tension, jealousy, resentment. Employees may feel helpless, hopeless. They may have diminished self-esteem, or they may even start to withdraw from not only just the social settings of work, but also just from their work in general. It can also cause employees to become more easily distracted, which could result in costly, harmful, or even fatal mistakes depending on the type of job they're performing. Another common workplace stressor is depression, or workplace problem is depression. As we all know, it affects about 16 million Americans. And they are finding that jobs which require frequent or difficult interactions with the public or clients, if they have high levels of stress or low levels of physical activity, tend to see the highest rates of depression among their employees. And again, it is really important to note that, depression symptoms aren't always the same among everybody. And employees can be very good at hiding these depression symptoms while they are on the job. So the next few slides are going to reference a stress in the workplace survey that was given by the American Psychological Association. And the survey had some important findings that we're going to kind of just touch upon here. And some of these findings can be implemented into standards of practices for companies as necessary if they choose to do so. So if you look at this slide here, you will see that a decent percentage of employees reported being satisfied with their companies or employers on these measures. So only 41% of adults asked reported that they typically feel stressed out during the workday. 60% reported that their employer provides sufficient opportunities for them to be involved in decision making and problem solving and goal setting at work. 40% of employees reported that their employer provides sufficient opportunities for internal career advancement, while 72% of employees reported that they feel motivated to do their very best for their employer. So these are pretty good numbers. If you look at the next slide very quickly here, you will see that some of these statistics aren't as good. So 46% of employees reported being satisfied with the growth and development opportunities offered by their employer. 48% of employees reported overall satisfaction with employee recognition practices of their employer. 48% reported feeling that they are receiving adequate monetary compensation. 45% reported that their employer has programs and policies that allow employees to be flexible in where, how much, and when they work. And 40% of employees reported that their employer helps employees develop and maintain a healthy lifestyle. Now, on all these measures, this is only half of employees reporting satisfaction. So less than 50% on each measure. This may indicate that employers are not doing enough to keep their employees happy and satisfied in the workplace. The take-home message of this survey is that feeling valued by your employer can affect an employee's assessment of their workplace. Those who feel valued are more likely to report being and feeling motivated to do their very best for their employer, whereas those who do not feel valued are less likely to recommend their place of work to others and are more likely to report wanting to find a job in the future. So another important tool that employers should have is to be able to recognize red flags of employees who may not be functioning at their best on the job. And again, these are important red flags to look for because it affects not only the employer or the employee, but also the employer and the company as a whole. So one of the red flags to look for is their attendance and availability. Are your employees using excessive sick time or maybe calling off without having time to do so? Are they frequently arriving late, maybe taking long breaks away from their desks? Maybe they're, socializing more rather than doing work, or a lot of people maybe, arguing a little bit more with their coworkers. The next slide talks about their quality of work. So has their quality of work changed at all? Maybe they've started missing deadlines, or you're seeing more errors. Is their on-the-job performance poorer than it has been in the past? Are you hearing complaints about them? Maybe within the office, maybe coworkers are talking about them, complaining about them, or maybe there's complaints coming from consumers. All of these could be red flags to a bigger issue. What about their attitude and conduct? Are you seeing them maybe refuse to follow directions? Has there been some blatant disregard for company policies and procedures? Or maybe the more outright signs of poor hygiene, or maybe they're coming to work smelling like alcohol or other drugs, or maybe even under the influence of drugs. So basically reporting to work in other than normal conditions. Again, these are all red flags that may indicate that a bigger issue is there and needs to be addressed. So in order to address, some of these things, we have to know what to look and listen for. And, these are just some examples of some behaviors or maybe some phrases that workers may use more frequently if they are experiencing stress in one of these areas. So, if they're experiencing workload stress, you might hear them say things like, I feel like I always have too much work, or, I have a high pressure job. My deadlines all seem to come at once. Maybe they say something, my efforts often seem for nothing. I don't have satisfying results. Or it seems like I have a lot more work than my coworkers, or maybe they're just saying that they feel overwhelmed often. If it's more of a relationship stressor, you could hear things like this. I have tension with family, friends, or coworkers. You'll also see that tension. They could say, I have trouble reaching a compromise in my personal relationships. Maybe they've had the death of a close friend or family member that they're having difficulties coping with. Maybe their children have recently moved out and they're starting to experience empty nest. Or maybe there's been a major change in their lifestyle, recently married, divorced, separated, children. Any of those things obviously can cause some stressors. Emotional stressors, you can hear them say things like, I find myself worrying about what other people think. I often spend more time thinking about what can go wrong rather than what can go right. Maybe they're having problems finding motivation or difficulty getting started with tasks. They have a tendency to get too worked up when under pressure or in crisis, or maybe they have a tendency to get down or dwell on how bad things are. And then finally, physical stressors. So, if they're experiencing any of those, you'll hear them say things like, I'm having a hard time sleeping. Maybe they're not staying asleep. Maybe they're having a hard time falling asleep. I'm often sick or dealing with providing care to loved ones. Maybe you're seeing them experience negative effects from caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, or other drugs. Maybe you're seeing them skip meals, losing weight, or often relying on fast food for their meals, or seeing them having a hard time having that work-life balance. So no motivation to exercise. They're not participating in enjoyable activities on their own or having a difficult time with self-care. So it's really important to listen very carefully to what employees are saying, as well as how they are saying it. This could be a very quick way to identify an issue and get involved in helping to solve the problem if necessary. So in order to create that supportive environment and help our employees, we want to create a stigma-free workplace. So, the National Mental Health Association and the National Council for Behavioral Health does recommend these action steps to create a stigma-free workplace. The first would be to educate employees about the signs and symptoms of mental health. Encourage your employees to discuss, stressors, whether they be personal or professional stressors. Communicate with your employees that mental illnesses are real, common, and treatable. Discourage stigmatizing language around mental illness. Invest in mental health benefits. Help your employees to transition back to work after they take leave, or even to understand what support systems they have out there. And again, consult with your, employee assistance program to deal with all this and help provide some support for your employees. And as we are, providing this supportive environment for our employees to come to us and talk to us about what they're experiencing, there are some things that we should say and maybe some things that we shouldn't say. So this is just a real quick slide to give you some examples of maybe what may seem benign in some cases to say, but could maybe be phrased in a more supportive and more sensitive way. So, instead of asking, how's your health? Maybe we could go with, how can we help you do your job? Or how can we help you do your job better? Instead of saying you seem depressed, maybe we could go with, you don't seem like your usual self. Instead of kind of just, snap out of it, this is easy to get out of, maybe offering a more supportive approach of, do you want to talk about it? Instead of think positive, you can encourage your employees to ask for help. And again, a benign thing of I know exactly what you're going through could be better stated. It's hard for me to understand exactly what you're going through, but I can see that it's stressing for you. So it is really important to remember that our first approach or attempt to discuss an issue with our employees could be the deciding factor on whether or not the employee confides in us. And we want to make sure that we approach in a very supportive and sensitive manner. And a good way to, offer support other than just being, inclusive and sensitive to their needs is to have an EAP. So EAPs, are very good at providing supportive counseling service for many personal issues and workplace issues. Lytle itself can provide, assistance with marital or family-related issues, legal and financial problems, health advocacy, career-related goals, as well as other problems. And obviously, good practice is just, as we already discussed, having a good company culture around mental health and well-being in general. It is really important for us to reduce the stigma associated with mental health concerns, encourage our employees to utilize the supportive services that are around them. The APA states, from the results of the 2016 survey do say, when it comes to building a climate of well-being, employers need to look beyond just physical health to help employees feel recognized, valued, and involved, and create opportunities for growth and development. But as the survey did reveal, employers are falling short of their efforts. And then finally, other good practices to kind of include in your, day-to-day work is to offer rewards and recognition to your employees, provide fair performance evaluations, obviously get them involved in decision-making and problem-solving and goal-setting, allow them opportunities for growth and advancement, and obviously keep them feeling valued. As Dan Pink describes in his book, Drive, employees thrive when they have autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That is all the information I have for you guys today. I really appreciate you sticking around. But if you have any questions, now would be the time to ask them.
If you have any questions, you can type them in the question box here, as you can see on the control panel. I'll just put a little message in there. Okay. I can, let's see, unmute if that's easier. Sometimes that doesn't work so well because it gets too much background, but I'll give it a try and unmute everyone just to see if anybody has any questions. Everybody's now unmuted. And if you wanted to ask. Okay. Sarah, one of the things that I really liked about your presentation, where you had the ideas about what you can say and what you can't, or some better ways to say some of those things. And I think sometimes it's really hard to start that conversation with folks. Sure. Like if you think an employee might be really experiencing stress at work and you can see that it's really impacted their performance, it's really hard to start that conversation. So some of the things you had to say about finding the right words, do you have any suggestions for how do you even begin? Because I think people are a little concerned about where to go with that conversation once it does begin. Sure.
It can be really difficult to approach an employee, especially an employee that maybe you don't have such a great rapport with. In my experiences, the best bet is to come from a very caring and concerned place rather than an accusatory place. So it's really important to focus on our I statement. So instead of saying, you look tired, you aren't performing well, you aren't doing this, this, and that, it may be easier to come from a more concerning place. So I feel that you're looking tired. I'm concerned that maybe you're not sleeping enough. I'm concerned that whatever's going on might affect your work. How can I help you? So kind of just maybe, again, coming from that concerning place rather than an accusatory place.
Okay. So somebody could say, I've noticed you look really tired lately.
Yes.
Something like that.
I think, yeah, and more so than just, stating the obvious, saying, I'm concerned that you look tired. Is there anything I can do to help you? Kind of offering that helping out piece.
Okay.
And I want to say that we had one question here. I can barely see the question, so I do apologize, guys. It says, how do you look for signs of suicide and how do you stop bullying? You could have a whole other presentation on those two topics, definitely important topics to discuss. As far as the suicidality, sometimes, there are no signs and sometimes there are. So, if you are thinking that somebody is contemplating suicide, it's really important to ask them. Don't be afraid to ask them. But they would experience things like maybe talking about wanting to die, or maybe talking about wanting to kill themselves. They might, you might see an increase in the use of alcohol or drugs. Maybe they're not sleeping enough. Maybe they're sleeping too much. They could be withdrawing or isolating themselves. You may experience extreme mood swings. I mean, it really can come in all forms. So I really think it is important. If you have any thoughts that maybe somebody is thinking about, killing themselves, address that right away. Definitely make sure that you ask the questions, provide support, point them in the right direction, suggest that they call their EAP or things like that. As far as the bullying question, that is a really interesting topic as well. And again, something that we could discuss for probably hours. But as far as the bullying goes, it does need to be addressed right off the bat. They are, having some success with doing webinars or things like this for companies so people understand what bullying exactly is, because sometimes we think we're being funny and joking, but we're actually not. We're, causing distress to other coworkers. So really teaching, workers, employees what bullying is, what it looks like, and then offering them some supports. And again, EAP can be there for you to help with these, whether it's talking to the one-on-one counselor or providing, information like this through these webinars. Hopefully I answered those questions a little bit. I apologize that I can't get more into it.
Yeah, those are good. I mean, like you said, they are things that could go on for hours.
Yeah.
And there's another question here. Can our agency get help from EAP to assist when one employee is returning from sick leave and is upset about work that the supervisor was unable to get done due to their demands to do two jobs?
Sick leave. I'm just reading through it. So yeah, I mean, a supervisor can always encourage an employee to contact their EAP. And again, it's confidential. The EAP counselor does not report anything back to that supervisor or to the employer specifically related to content. So our EAP definitely could assist with that on many levels. There's the personal piece of getting back to work, whether it be from an illness or from, something else, and the professional piece of, having that disdain towards the supervisor, so the EAP can definitely be of assistance with that sort of thing.
Yeah, we provide unlimited consultation to supervisors and managers, so we can help the manager look at how to navigate those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And also with the bullying and the suicide, those are other things too that give us a call, because there are things that we can help with as well. If you're concerned that an employee is suicidal, please give us a call, because those are things that we can help with and help assess that employee and, be sure that they're safe, and that we can provide consultation to the supervisor as well on that one. And the same for bullying too. I think the EAP is a valuable resource with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. Okay. Well, then we'll sign off. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for the good questions. Really appreciate that. I thought I saw another one, but I don't. Okay. Thank you all. Thanks
thank
for
you all for
joining us.
joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Great information.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye-bye.